It's been too long, but we're back. It is another edition of Musings from the Mountains, the WVSports.com video podcast. I'm Keenan Cummings. If you watched it before, you know that already. Managing editor at WVSports.com.
And I'm Patrick Kotnik, staff writer for WVSports.com.
And guess what we have this weekend, Patrick?
We have a football game.
Yes, we do, and I think we should probably talk about that.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, we'll touch on a few things over the course of this podcast that are relevant to the West Virginia football team. They open up against James Madison, as all of you know, not the president, but a school that is very good at the FCS level. One or two, depending on what rankings you look at. An interesting team. You know, they returned 20 of 22 starters. One of those guys that does return wasn't a starter last year, but was a starter the year before and actually got hurt. So they're a pretty loaded club. With West Virginia, still, there's some question marks. That isn't necessarily a bad thing in a sense. Neil Brown addressed the media today, talked a little bit about how his team is young, but that might not be a bad thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not going to overlook James Madison. They have enough concerns on their own table. They've got to try to figure out a little bit about, you know, what guys are going to win battles in certain spots, you know, how they're going to figure out rotations, but being young isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think the thing I took away from Neil, one of the interesting things to me, is even though they are young, they want even some of these true freshmen that are going to play, they want them in the game playing, Pat.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that was one of the things that stood out the most to me was getting these guys in the game early, and that's something with usually some other head coaches they're not really all for that. I mean, they'll use the redshirt rule. Neil Brown addressed that today, but really he said, you know, if these guys are going to play down the road, why not get them in early in the game? It gets all the uneasiness. There's going to be some uneasiness, you know, in there. Why not get them in the game early? That way they have to use them down the road. They have to use them later in the game. They have that game experience. They're more, I guess, equipped, more adjusted to it than what they would have been if you just throw them in there, you know, later down the road or, you know, near the end of a game.
Yeah, and the redshirt rule really helps here. You know, you have 4 shots. They want to make sure that they maximize these 4 shots. If guys are only going to play 4 games, keep that red shirt intact. They want to make sure that these guys are seeing significant snaps. They're not going to throw them in there for 2 or 3 plays for a kneel down at the end of the game. They want them thrown in high leverage situations so you can find out what kind of football team you have. Mm-hmm. It was interesting to me, you know, Matt Moore talking about the offensive line. He's got to do the same thing. He sort of scripts how he's going to play those guys. You know, he has a plan coming in, how he's going to play them, and regardless of how things are going, he wants to stick to it because if you don't, you'll find yourself in a lot of situations where you're kind of just trusting yourself over your plan. So once again, going back to this coaching staff, everything is planned out.
Very structured.
Yes.
Very structured.
Right guard. Asked a little bit about that today. West Virginia, that's the one position that isn't settled. You know, since last time we talked, it's official. Josh Sills is your starter at center. Not necessarily surprising, but now we know where the spot is that's going to receive the most attention, and that's right guard. The other 4 guys are set. It's a battle right now between John Hughes, who's a junior college guy that arrived in May, and Chase Barrett, and it's been a little bit of back and forth. You know, Chase responded after being disappointed, losing that job at center. He's played better at guard. You know, Matt Moore made it clear that he's been a better guard than he was at center. And then, of course, Hughes has played probably past what anybody expected at this point because he's a guy that probably, I mean, he was well coached at junior college level, but he probably needed a year to get stronger. So it's telling that he's put himself in that kind of position.
And looking back on this too, I mean, it kind of makes sense, you know, considering that the coaching staff did say Chase was struggling there at the center spot. That Friday scrimmage, they wanted to see. It was clear they wanted to see more production up front. And going back to what Moore said today about building the offensive line, ideally, you know, especially in the Big 12, you want to have your most athletic guys play tackle, play on the outside. Then, you know, when it comes to your 3 inside guys, the 2 guards in the center, you want to have the best one of those 3 play center, and that makes sense for this move. Obviously, Sills is one of the best offensive linemen on the team. Him and Colt McKivitz definitely the top 2 guys. McKivitz is definitely going to be on the outside playing left tackle. You got to have Sills as an inside guy. If he's the best one of that group, of that middle, you got to have him play center. I mean, looking back on it now, move was surprising at first, but when you look back at it in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense.
Hey, especially when you hear that plan, when he lays out the way that he kind of put this offensive line together. Health-wise for West Virginia, everything's good. There's one player that's out. Now, knock on wood again, I did this last time and it worked. So before anybody tries to accuse me,
John Gruden doing that.
People tried to accuse me of jinxes, so I'm knocking on some wood. The table does happen to be wood, so that helps. Only Drayshawn Miller. He's the only guy, junior college transfer cornerback, that is definitely out right now. They've had some guys nicked up, some guys banged up a little bit. Jared Bartlett, who's a linebacker that they're expecting on to play with Vandarius Cowan suspended for 4 games, has been battling an ankle sprain. A couple fall camp bumps and bruises, but relatively healthy, heading into the opener, which allows them some of that flexibility we talked about earlier, that if they don't want to burn one of those 4 games for a guy that's not going to play, they don't have to. Mm-hmm. It's the opener, relatively healthy, so everything good on that front. Something else I took away I thought was interesting, and you expect this. Austin Kendall's your starting quarterback. He's been a lot more vocal. He's taken command of that role. It's really, in theory, hard to do that until you are the starter, because you're in a quarterback battle. Everyone assumed that was how it was going to turn out, but once you get the results, it's a lot easier to be more assertive, kind of get your teammates to get around you, and that's something that Neil Brown mentioned.
Yeah, and you need to be vocal as a quarterback. You're the leader of that offensive group. I know now that the battle's been solidified, now he can be a little more assertive than that. But when you're a quarterback, you have to be. Yeah, you have to be the vocal leader of that group.
Yeah, and it's paid off for Austin. This is going to be the first game he's really started since high school. He made the move. It was a lot of buzz at the time with whether or not he was going to get approved by Oklahoma. It's obviously paid off for him. He's going to be your starting quarterback game 1, has the trust of this team. So I think at this point, this is Austin Kendall's team, and we're going to see kind of what happens. And it's exciting in the sense that West Virginia's wide receiver situation has probably improved itself more than probably any group on the roster, I would say, from the spring to the fall. So they've got some options there, with Sean Ryan obviously being declared eligible, which we had not talked about yet.
No, we haven't.
That's big news in itself. West Virginia 2 for 2 with the waiver game this year, which a lot of schools can't say that, especially with some of the changes they made to the NCAA rules. But we're going to get in depth on James Madison. We kind of stayed away a little bit. We're going to do a game preview for you guys. Probably be out tomorrow or Thursday. We're going to offer picks. I'm going to put Patrick on the spot. He's not a guy that likes to make picks. I'm making that up. But he's going to offer a pick. I'm going to offer a pick. And we'll have some fun with it. Flipping gears a little bit, wanted to touch on basketball. Today is the last day for students to enroll. Ethan Richardson, who is the junior college player that signed late with West Virginia, has not enrolled. I'm not going to say never, but do the math here. I don't think it looks good for Ethan Richardson to make it into school. If he does not, that gives West Virginia obviously another scholarship to use in 2020, and we'll give them 3. They'd have 3 open slots when the guys graduate, because they already have signed one guy. Well, they haven't signed him. They'll sign him in November in Isaiah Cottrell from Huntington Prep, who recently transferred there. But they'll have 3 open slots. They've got some needs, obviously. Some guys are set to visit this weekend. So basketball news in the middle of football.
Why not?
Yeah. But this has been another episode of Musings in the Mountains. I hope you had a good time with us. And join us again for our game preview later this week.